Welcome back to the Comics Multiverse. My name is Chad, as always, and we are a part of the Comic Watch website. And today we have Richard Ashley Hamilton, who has a new release through one of our favorite publishers, Mad Cave's Maverick Imprint. So always glad to hear what they have going on and talk to their creators. So let's get right into it and let's find out about Richard and his comic book journey and his book. How's it going, Richard?
It's going great, Chad. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Comic Watch.
Like I said, I've done a lot of um, interviews with creators through Mad Cave's Maverick imprint, and it's a really nice imprint, and they have some good stuff. So I'm sure you're right there with them because so
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm a little biased, but I think Maverick is fantastic and legitimately the best comics publisher I've ever worked with. And my goal is to just not have them be sick of me, so that we can keep making things together.
So tell us a little bit about yourself first as a comic book reader and then a creator, and how how you got started.
Yeah, I mean, I got started young. I got hooked on spinner racks in the 80s. I think I was about 3 years old. I grew up in Miami, Florida, and that's where Scoop is set. But my grandfather was originally from Cuba, and he loved smoking cigars. And so he'd go to the 7-Eleven to pick up cigars, and he'd take me with him. And, there was just one of those beautiful, colorful spinner racks there in the shop. And I was drawn like a moth to flame when I saw some of those covers. And I still have all of those comics from my childhood. And it's really how I learned to read and write. I mean, I couldn't read back then, but I could, figure out from the pictures what was going on. And, my parents would read to me and explain to me what was going on. And, once I got bitten by the comic bug, it's never left. I'm not exactly proud of this, but I know there's a lot of people who say like they gave up comics because they discovered girls or music or dating, or that never happened to me. I mean, I did discover those things, but I never gave up the comics, for better or for worse.
Same here.
Yeah.
And now my wife is stuck with my storage unit.
Yeah, same. My wife and yours should form a support group. I'm sure there's a lot of other very conflicted ladies out there who would love to bitch about our collections.
So, tell us a little bit about Scoop. It's the second in the series. Am I correct?
Yeah. So, Buried Leads is the title of our second volume that comes out September 24th. Volume 1 came out, I think, around the end of April. And that one is called Scoop Breaking News. So they're all standalone books, but there's definitely an overarching mystery that unites all of them. And it's about this girl named Sophie Cooper who lives in my hometown of Miami. She's redheaded, Cuban American, and like most teenagers, just wants to have a really normal life. The only problem is her dad has been accused of like this massive financial crime. And he's stuck on house arrest. He's got an ankle monitor, the works. And there hasn't been a trial yet, but everyone in the news and everyone in Miami and around the world, they're just convinced he's guilty of sin. The only person who believes he's innocent is Sophie. And in her teenage mind, she thinks, well, if the news was responsible for kind of like vilifying my dad, maybe I can use the news to clear his name and get my normal life back. And so she starts interning at a TV news station in Miami. They're the worst. It's total amateur hour. They get all the facts wrong. Their technology is way out of date. They suck. But there is one journalist there who is kind of like a washed up guy, but he takes Sophie under his wing. He starts to teach her about the news. And as an intern, she's stuck kind of doing all the gopher work, like getting coffee for people and answering phones and nothing too glamorous. But while she's doing that, she starts to get all these calls. They sound like prank calls, weird news tips about UFOs and ghosts and time travel. And nobody believes them. It all sounds like nonsense, but Sophie investigates them and they're all true. And all this weird sci-fi stuff is also somehow connected to the case against her dad. So if she can prove to the world that all these paranormal things are real, then she clears her dad's name and Bob's your uncle. She gets her old life back. So that's kind of like the overarching story of Scoop. In volume 1, we meet Sophie, we meet the news team. They start to investigate a real life mystery, which is based on the murder of the famous fashion designer Gianni Versace. I grew up in Miami and I used to intern at CNN. And my first day on the job was the day that Versace got murdered outside his home in South Beach. Yeah, it was a horrible tragedy, but selfishly for me, it was an incredible learning experience. And that's kind of informed a lot of what eventually became Scoop. So she investigates that and also starts to investigate some sci-fi shenanigans out in the Everglades. And we come to learn there's a bit of an overlap with that. And volume 2 continues that story. Sophie's sci-fi investigation deepens. She learns more clues about this weird conspiracy that's taking place in South Florida in her backyard. And instead of kind of doing a case based off of Versace in the second book, we have a story that's based a little bit on O.J. Simpson. Because also when I was growing up in Miami, after O.J. Simpson was acquitted of the trial of the century, he moved to Miami. He moved to my neighborhood. And we'd see him at the movie theaters and at the coffee shop. And it was pretty freaky. So that kind of planted the seed for the story in Buried Leads.
Well, I kind of, again, date myself like I like to do on here. I was, when the guilty verdict came down, I was sitting on a school bus having just finished a college career kind of college/career, thing that they sent us to as high schoolers. So.
Yeah, I mean, I remember I was also in high school and they stopped class in the middle of 5th period, wheeled in a TV because all the teachers wanted to know the verdict. Like everyone wanted to know. So the principal made some BS announcement of like, this is important for the students to know because it's about the news media and history. But honestly, everyone just wanted to know if OJ was going to be found guilty or not. And yeah, it was pretty wild. So we don't, look, like Scoop is a YA book. I mean, it's really for everyone. If you're a grown up, you can read it. If you're younger, you can read it. So we don't get into any like gory details in the way the real OJ case does. But the idea of sort of a disgraced celebrity moving into Soph's hometown and then asking for her help to clear his name, that's kind of the element that we're borrowing from real life. And for Sophie, it's kind of an interesting challenge because without getting in any spoilers, by the end of the first volume, she takes a really big first step in clearing her dad's name. And so now people are starting to listen to her and they're starting to realize that she's seeing news stories out there that other people might miss. And so that's good in the sense that she's helping to expose these injustices that have been going unnoticed. But it's bad because now all these people are starting to come out of the woodwork and they want Sophie to either clear their name or trying to use her to cover up the crimes they actually are committing. So a little bit of like a moral gray area there for her, and she definitely learns and grows as part of all this. But it's not just murders. We have UFOs, we have crop circles, we have alligator men, we have mad scientists. It's I always tell people,
sold me.
Yeah, it's like I think the shorthand we use is Veronica Mars meets X-Files.
Mm-hmm. So who are you working with on the book?
Yep.
Artist wise, are you just writing this?
Yeah, I'm just writing this. I mean, I can draw, but not anything anyone wants to see. Nothing at a professional level. So no, I'm very very fortunate. Our artist on Scoop is a guy named Pablo Andres. He illustrated Volume 2. He also illustrated Volume 3, which is even better. That comes out next year, and he's already working on Volume 4 right now. So Pablo's the man, and Simon Robbins is our colorist, and they are making beautiful music together. It's they have a really cool look in these books, and then Dave Lamphere has edited Scoop from the very beginning with Volume 1, so he's with us for the series, and he's kind of amazing. For me as a writer, I feel like your letterer should be your best friend because he covers so many of my mistakes and makes my writing look so much better. So I definitely appreciate that. And then our editors are Christina Harrington and Mike Martz, who are no slouches. They're amazing editors. So that's our Scoop troop.
Yep. We a couple months ago, because Mad Cave is celebrating 10 years, we chatted with Mike March. So
Yeah,
he's a great guy, and he's done some great things for Mad Cave.
yeah, he sure has. And for me personally, and I would also just say, like, for the industry, I mean, he's been at this for so long, and he really knows what he's doing. And anytime he gives me a note, my immediate reactions are first being pissed off because I don't feel like doing more work, but then very quickly realizing this is an excellent note and it makes the story better. And so it's nice for me. I sort of used to self-publish comics and didn't have that support system. So when you're writing anything, but I think especially something that's like a story that's based a little bit on your personal life, it makes me feel self-conscious. So it's really great to know that I have editors like Mike and Christina there to keep me honest and let me know if the story is going to make sense to anyone other than me and what's working and what isn't. And yeah, for me, the best thing about working on comics is that collaboration.
I mean, that was kind of my next question. I know you're a screenwriter too. Um, is it was how is there a transition that you have to make from screenwriting to comics, or is there a different part of your creative process that you have to kind of, I guess, flex?
I mean, I think in terms of process, they're not dissimilar. I mean, I again, I'm very biased, but I think writing comics is probably the hardest kind of writing you can do because it forces you to be so economical with your language and to think visually and also just to invite that collaboration at an early level.
Hmm.
And I feel like if you can write comics, then you can write anything else. It's that much easier to write screenplays, and from there, it's easier to write novels. And I mean, novels are different; they're more internal and stuff. But again, I feel like comics is like the nitty gritty of storytelling, and you just don't have the space to kind of goof around. So you really got to get to it and try and make the story as compelling and as emotional as quickly as possible and as like efficiently and elegantly. So I love that challenge. But like in terms of like career wise screenwriting versus comics, I mean, that Spinner Rack didn't have screenplays on it; it had comics on it. So like that's where my heart is. That's where it's always been. And I'm sort of ashamed to admit this, but I went to film school, and I think all that was a very long, very expensive way of realizing I just really wanted to make comics. So here we are.
Yeah.
All that tuition later.
So, kind of tell me about the creative process between, you as the writer and your artist, and how did that work out? As someone who has no creative bone in their body, I'm interested in the different relation, how the different writer creator relationships are work.
Well, I want to push back a little bit against you because I bet you do have some creativity, and I'll just say that even being able to like talk to creators about their craft and stuff. Like there's an art to that. And I know for me and a lot of other comics writers and artists, we listen to interviews like these, we listen to podcasts like these, and we're all process junkies, so we love hearing the way other people work. But I'm constantly picking up things that creators that I admire. I hear them drop a little nugget here or there on a different conversation or podcast, and I take those things to heart, and they impact me. So for what it's worth, I think you're doing the Lord's work, Chad. And to answer your question, though,
can you tell? Well, I would say tell my wife that, but I don't know if that would help me.
She doesn't want to listen to me. I got as many comics as you do.
Probably, yeah.
We'll figure something out.
We'll have our own support group.
That's it. Yeah, nobody ever comes to the defense of the men. Why is that? No, I'm totally kidding. Process. It's really like just coming up with sort of an idea for a story, sharing it with Mike and Christina, getting their feedback, hearing if it carries any water. Like we want each of these volumes to be its own standalone, complete meal. Like you read it, has a beginning, middle, and end. It doesn't feel like it's just a small chapter in a larger story. Like I really want readers to get their money's worth. And I remember when I started out reading comics, all the comics that were on the spinner rack, they very seldomly were their number one. It was all these like established series that had been running for a long time. And so you're picking up a story kind of in the middle, and yet I never felt lost. I never felt like, I wanted to go and seek out what came before and what would come after, but it wasn't like I was just thrown to the wolves and didn't understand the story and that comic I was holding. So that's super important to me when I'm writing stuff, is I want to make sure, like, even if you've never read any of the other Scoop books, even if you pick up like volume 2 or 3 or 4, you can tell what's going on very quickly. And hopefully if I do my job right, then you want to go back and check out those other ones for the bigger picture.
Definitely.
We want to figure out like what those initial mysteries are. There's usually real world crime that Sophie investigates, and also a supernatural crime. And we're always trying to find interesting ways to intersect them. And then the other big conversation I have is I always email Pablo, our artist, and I ask him, like, what do you want to draw? What do you hate to draw? What have you always wanted to draw but never got the chance? What are you interested in drawing but scares you? And the truth is, Pablo can draw anything. He's an unbelievable artist, and probably the smartest artist working in comics. Because the next step, once I write the script, he starts giving us thumbnail layouts, and they're incredibly thoughtful. He even figures out balloon placement to make sure that the dialogue is accommodated in the art. And when I write full script, I don't write Marvel style, but all the layouts and the panel descriptions I give are just suggestions. I'm lucky to work with somebody like Pablo, who, if he sees a better way to go with it, we just go with that, no questions asked. And then from there, he gives us, Mike and Christina weigh in from the editorial side. I get the comment only from the standpoint of, like, is there an important story detail that's missing from this page? Because Scoop has all these mysteries in it, setup and payoff are super important. So you want to make sure you're seeding in all the clues properly and clearly, so that when we do the reveal at the end of the book, it all makes sense. So that's really the only lens I'm looking at the art through at that stage. And then Pablo turns around these beautiful pencils and inks, and then Simon starts laying in colors and adds a lot of depth. We use a lot of photo reference for Miami, just because I grew up there. I would hate comics when, like, somebody drew mountains in the background or something. Like, Miami is very flat, very green, and because this is just based a lot on my hometown and my childhood there and interning there and stuff. I try to ground.
None of the characters are like wearing like full winter wear.
Right, exactly. You'd be amazed how many times that happens. And I get it, like comics creators, it's an international community. Not everyone's been to every city where every comic is set. But I feel like that's part of my job when I write the script, is to include that reference where it's important. And because we have a lot of far out sci-fi elements in the stories, whenever we have stuff set in the real world, I want that to feel as grounded and realistic as possible, because then I don't know, in my mind, were more apt to go with Sophie and the characters when they go into the kind of weirder parts of the story.
Mhm.
And so Simon, our colorist, plays a crucial role in furthering all that stuff and just really bringing the art further to life. We, because we're set in Miami, it's a real cultural melting pot. So we have a very diverse cast of characters. So skin tones and representation, all that becomes very crucially important. And then, yeah, Dave goes in after that and letters the hell out of it. And really, I mean, he's been doing this for a long time. I was actually just going through some old Malibu Ultraverse comics from the '90s and seeing Dave's name in there, and seeing even some of the same. They look like the same fonts that he's using back then that he's using now. So that's really trippy. And we have a lot of kind of like different creatures. We have alligator people. We have a mangrove man, and Dave has come up with unique lettering voices for each of them. So it's really cool. Every character not just looks different, but they also sound different to the extent that you can hear things in comics. And through all that, Mike and Christina are guiding everything. And then we also have some pretty cool back matter in our comics, especially when we get to volume 3. We have a recipe for my grandmother's black beans. And we have these cool conspiracy boards that show all of Sophie's clues that she has amassed so far in her education or her adventures. So if you're
comic readers love maps like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. We're all suckers for it. But, if you're an eagle-eyed reader, you might find some clues in there and make some connections in the mysteries yourself. So it's all in there. It's all set up. It's just waiting for somebody to kind of crack the code.
And this just kind of occurred to me, being a mystery writer, do you, when you're thinking of things, work backwards from, the eventual outcome, or do you kind of let the mystery kind of evolve as you are, exploring it?
Kind of yes to both. I think like I kind of start backwards from the reveal, like what really happened. So what's the answer to the mystery? So I work backwards from there from a plot standpoint, but I work forwards from a character standpoint, and I'm always trying to determine what's the theme or what's the lesson that Sophie's going to learn in this volume, and how can I reverse engineer her journey as a character and the mystery so that they meet and weave together in a really cohesive way, so that Sophie can only learn this thing about herself or her world by solving this mystery, and at the same time this mystery can only be solved by Sophie Cooper.
And as you've been writing this story, has there been a character other than, let's say, Sophie, that you've kind of grown attached to, that you would, I don't know if the word is explore more, but kind of either, want to further develop?
Yeah, I mean, not to choose amongst my children, but I mean, the one who's the most fun to write is her mentor, Hal Ritz, who's this older, washed-up reporter. He's based very much on a guy who mentored me when I was at CNN. Not that he was washed up or anything. His name was Bob Vito. But Bob Vito had been in the reporting game for a long time and had broken or claimed to break every major news story of the past century. And so I don't know if that works out math-wise, but he's a really interesting character, and Hal is based a lot on that. So Hal is kind of like on the surface, this very kind of casual, easy breezy, shows up at the last second to record his piece, and then he's off to the golf course or happy hour or something like that. But in seeing Sophie, he sees a much younger version of himself, and he's kind of at this point in his career, maybe jaded isn't the right word, but the news reporting industry, it is an industry, it's a grind, and so I think he's feeling a little burnt out on it. And meeting Sophie and seeing her quest for the truth about her dad and her passion to report the facts, it sort of reignites something in Hal. And and all he can give back to her really is like his experience and his lessons. So he has these Ritz reporting rules that he shares with her throughout. And so they help each other. They have a really fun relationship. They have kind of rat-a-tat dialogue with each other. They argue all the time. Most of the time Sophie's right and Hal is wrong, but there's a couple of times where Hal is right and Sophie's wrong, and that really drives her up the wall. So he's a blast to write. Sophie's little brother Kit is based on my little brother, and my little brother is a tech genius, and so is Kit. So he's kind of like the Q to her James Bond. So we have some fun inventions that he creates that are all based on real functional science. And, because they're big sister, little brother, they have a great antagonistic relationship at times. And Sophie's also involved in a little teen love triangle with two boys. And one of them is the boy I wished I were back then. And the other one is more who I really was. And the cool one, his name's Usnavy. He's a Cuban guy. He's an intern, but for the Miami-Dade Police Department. And so he's able to give Sophie a lot of cool inside intel from the cops side of these mysteries that she's investigating. And they also have lovely little flirty banter over coffee every now and then. They take intern breaks. And then Milo, who's way more like me, is the AV club geek at her high school. And he's shy and awkward and all that. But he's another, like I said, he's the AV expert. And so if Sophie finds footage and needs to verify if it's real or not, Milo's your guy. And he's just a big goofball and a lot of fun too. And he's a hell of a good dancer, as we find out in Buried Leads. So, no spoiler.
So is there anything else about the book or, your experience with Mad Cave that, we maybe haven't covered that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, how much time do you have? What else can I tell you? I think I always get nervous with sequels, to the extent that the first scoop was good and people liked it. I want to make sure that we're furthering that and doing like a continuation of the character stories, but not doing a total retread of the first book. So I think we struck the balance with that one. It was something we all worked really hard on. And so, again, you could read this book in isolation, but if you read it with the first volume, it gives you a bigger picture. It's pretty fun. I can't speak to the story too much because, I wrote it, so I'm the last person you should ask about that. But I'll tell you, the artwork is phenomenal, and I mean truly phenomenal. Maverick puts out beautiful books, but I have it on good authority that everyone at Mad Cave loves Pablo's work, and they're trying to get him onto their books. And Christina, our editor, is saying, back off. Pablo has to finish Scoop first. So, that's how in demand he is, and we just got lucky. And yeah, I'm very thankful to Mad Cave and Maverick for giving me at least 4 volumes to tell the story. It's like, it's hard to get even one book made these days. There's so much great other books out there that are competition, that it's, vying for everyone's attention. So for Maverick and Mad Cave to see something in Scoop and invest this much, and it means a lot to me. And I hope that gives readers a vote of confidence too. Like Mad Cave has been doing a lot of smart things these past couple of years. So I think they've got great judgment, and I take that as a big vote of confidence for Scoop. So I hope everyone who reads it feels the same way. And yep.
And where can people find out more about you and your work?
Nowhere. This is it, Chad. I'm sorry. I'm so horrible on social media. I try and stay away from it for mental health reasons.
I understand.
Account. I check it very infrequently, but that's at Regards Richard. That's at Twitter or X. I'm on Facebook.
It's always going to be Twitter. Well, we will never on this show refer to it as X.
Yeah, I still say Twitter, but whatever. That place. And then on Facebook, I'm under my full dorky name, Richard Ashley Hamilton. There, you can find me there. I'm on LinkedIn. That's where a lot of really hot comic conversations take place. on LinkedIn, and I'm on Instagram. And that my handle there is at RAH, my initials, _writer. It's a terrible handle. Like I told you, I'm not good at the social media game. But I go to conventions. I love going to conventions and meeting people there. So I'll be at New York Comic Con.
I will have to stop by and say hello.
Well, then we can do this in person. I look forward to it. And I'll be at the Miami Book Fair in November. I don't know if you can travel down there, but Miami's lovely.
That's a bit far.
Yeah. Yeah. More conventions throughout the year and into next year. And, I really missed that during the pandemic, so it's nice to go back now. And if you haven't been to a Mad Cave booth at conventions, they're really nice looking, they're really well laid out. They have great programming, all the product is on display, and they're just a really nice group of people. So you should definitely check them out at any of these shows. And
definitely.
Doing if I can plug one other project I'm doing with Maverick.
Go ahead, plug away.
Thank you. I have another graphic novel series with them. It's called Detective, short for detective. And it's sort of a post-apocalyptic noir mystery thing set in a far future version of LA. It's not Blade Runner. And that comes out in December. And that's me writing it. And I'm teaming with the guys I did this other book with a couple years ago called Fear Book Club. It was a book that was published by Aftershock. But our artist from that, a guy named Marco Matrone, he's illustrated Detective. It is beautiful, beautiful. And Dave Sharp is our letterer on it, and Mike and Christina are editing that one. So that one comes out December 10th, I want to say. And that's the first volume in that series. And I'm doing one other book with Mad Cave, but it hasn't been announced yet, so I can't say anything about that.
No. Completely understand. And when does the second volume of Scoop come out?
Oh, yes, very important. September 24th in stores. Okay. And you can pre-order it through the Mad Cave website. You can get it through Diamond, through Simon & Schuster, Lunar. It's carried in all major bookstores. Barnes & Noble, Amazon has it. You can get it pretty much anywhere.
All right. Well, definitely can't wait to check that out. And it was a pleasure chatting with you. And we'll definitely have to catch up about your other projects at New York Comic Con if we have a chance.
Well, I would love that. Thank you, Chad. It's nice meeting you. Thanks for having me on here and talking to you.
All right. Well, again, as I said, it's always great to chat with creators like yourself. And Mad Cave has been putting out, some excellent stuff. And so when they come knocking for interviews, then it's going to be good stuff. And I can't wait to check out this book.
Oh, thanks. I hope you like it. And yeah, Mad Cave, everyone there's so nice, it's impossible to say no to them. So, yes, whatever they want.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and we'll be in touch.
That sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Great.
Thanks.
Later.